I figured it'd be best just to start in verse 3 today. And as you can see written in gray up there, this verses 3 through 20 is a caution against immorality to his son or even his children. He mentions children later on in this. But bottom line is he's teaching anyone who reads this message, giving us all a caution against immorality. And just like he had said before, he talks about the immoral woman and cautions his son against going to an immoral woman. And we said at that time, it could just as easily be flipped over and talk about the immoral man and for a woman to not fall victim to that. So the reason he uses a woman for his example, I believe, is simply because he's talking to his son, and it applies to him in that way. But it applies to either of the genders, the male or female. You don't want to get sucked into immorality by an immoral person. So just looking back at verses 1 and 2, he says, "My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Lend your ear to my understanding, that you may preserve discretion and your lips may keep knowledge." So he's been saying knowledge, wisdom, understanding, these are the things to get. This is what gives you life. So pay attention to it. And then verse 3, here's why. That little word "for" means here's why. Here's why you need to pay attention to it: because the lips of an immoral woman drip honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But in the end, she's bitter as wormwood, sharp as any two-edged sword. So you want to exercise some judgment and discretion, because there are folks out there that are trying to, like he said, lips is sweeter than honey, or drip of honey. And I put outside, she's a sweet talker, and her mouth smoother than oil, smooth talker. We all know about smooth talking people and sweet talking people. Their goals are usually something less than honorable. Not always, I suppose. You can have a smooth talker that tries to talk you into becoming a Christian, I guess. But what he's talking about is the kind of the opposite of that. But so why would that be the problem? Why would he say, here's why? What does a smooth talking person do? They try to talk you into stuff, try to talk you into bad stuff. Sweet talking, the same thing. And why do they talk sweet talk? Because it's convincing, and it convincing and also alluring, I guess you might say. Just that's how they get to you, is by saying stuff that they think you want to hear, and just saying stuff that are sparks your imagination and tries to get you to do things that are enjoyable, I guess you would say, but not right as far as God is concerned. And so you want to pay attention to what Solomon is saying. Listen to his wisdom so that you can hang on to a little bit of discretion and make some good decisions. If somebody approaches you like this immoral woman approaching Rehoboam, for example, you'll have enough discretion to say, no, that's not for me. And what did he already said about the paths of wickedness? Should you go right to it? No, he said avoid it. Don't go in it. And if you get in it, get out. And so this is his words of wisdom that he's trying to do. This immoral person is trying to get the other one to go down the path of iniquity, and you don't want to let that happen. They'll sweet talk you, they'll smooth talk you, but what's the end of it? The but there is the contrast, as opposed to, oh, it sounds really good, sweet talking, smooth talking. the end result is that the contrast is all the smooth talk and all the honey dripping talk ends up being bitter as wormwood and sharp as any two-edged sword. Bitter as wormwood, we know what that means. Bitter, he's not talking about a literal woman speaking and having something bitter coming out of her mouth. He's talking about something that doesn't taste too good. It's bad for an experience. And then sharper than any two-edged sword. Why would he say that? What's that? It'll cut you in half, cut straight through you. Two-edged sword has double the cutting power. It cuts both ways. So it's as powerful of a weapon as they had in those days. And it literally will cut you down morally. To listen to this smooth talking, honey dripping woman trying to get you to do stuff that you shouldn't be doing. Verse 5 says, her feet go down to death. Her steps lay hold of hell or Hades. That word means the realm of the dead. This is Hebrew parallelism. He's saying the same thing twice. And her feet, it goes to death, destruction, and goes to the realm of the dead. It'll kill you, in other words. Her immorality will take you where you do not want to go. And so, as he is saying up the top there, pay attention to my wisdom. He kind of carries the thought here, lest you ponder her paths of life. If you don't pay attention to wisdom and try to keep discretion, here's what will happen. You begin pondering her path of life. Somebody look back in your notes and read chapter 4, verse 26.
Then all your ways will be sure.
Okay. Back there, just a few verses back, he says, ponder the paths of your feet so that your ways might be sure and steady. Now he says, if you want to keep my wisdom in your mind and my understanding, you need to keep discretion. Otherwise, you may do the opposite of what I just told you to do. Ponder the paths of right. You may ponder her path of life, which is a path of death. But he says her ways are unstable. And back in chapter 4, verse 26 is so that how does it word it there? Instead of stable, it says sure, steady, that kind of thing. The paths of righteousness, you stay steady and heading in the right direction. Her ways, this immoral woman, her ways are unstable, not established, but you don't know what's going to happen. In fact, it says next, you do not know them. You don't know what she's up to. You don't know. You don't know where it's going to end up. What's going to end up happening? Too many unknowns there, and they're all in direction that you really don't want to go. So then in verse 7, he says, therefore, because of all I just said, here's my conclusion. Hear me now, my children. Do not depart from the words of my mouth. Remove your way far from her. Stay away from immorality. Do not go near the door of her house, lest you give your honor to others and your years to the cruel one. So that word honor means dignity, vigor, majesty, everything that's respectable about you, you're giving it to somebody else. If you fall victim to immorality, and you don't want to do that. You want to hear what Solomon is saying and don't depart from what he says, because what will happen is that you will give your honor to somebody else. If you don't listen, don't pay attention, don't honor what Solomon is saying, you're going to end up losing your dignity to someone else and your years to the cruel one. Satan's out there to kill us, right? That's what he wants to do. And when you let yourself fall into his grip, uh, who is it that's controlling that immoral woman? It's Satan. You fall into her grip, you're falling into Satan's grip, and he's trying to kill you. And then he says, also, lest aliens be filled with your wealth and your labors go to the house of a foreigner. You start going down the wrong path, what's going to end up is foreigners are going to come in and take what you have. That may be a long-term kind of situation. But if you look at the nation of Israel, what happened? They went, what did God call it when they went after idols? It was adultery. It was adultery that they were going after other gods instead of their husband, who was God. And what happened to them?
They lost.
Foreigners came in and took everything that they had and took them and even took them off into captivity, made them slaves and other such things. And so this is what he's talking about. It may be a long-term result, but it's going to happen. If you follow down this path, you're going to lose what you have. And it may come sooner, it may come later, but it's going to happen if you don't listen to what Solomon is saying, if you don't listen to his wisdom and pay attention to it. So in verse 11, and you mourn at last when your flesh and your body are consumed. That's the end result when you let yourself get taken over by immorality. Your flesh and body are consumed, and here's what you say when that happens. How I have hated instruction, and my heart despised correction. I have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined mine ear to those who instructed me. I was on the verge of total ruin in the midst of the assembly and congregation. What do those words sound like? Regret. Oh man, I should have listened. How I have hated instruction, and I despise correction, but there's a strong element of, oh man, that was the wrong thing to do. And when he says in the midst of the assembly there at the bottom of 14, that just means publicly. In the midst of the assembly is publicly. David in the Psalms talks about proclaiming God in the midst of the assembly. It just means I'm saying it out loud. I'm talking to the public. Well, you can also have a downfall in public. And this is what you say if you don't listen to wisdom, you don't follow after Solomon's instruction, you go after the immorality, you're going to end up saying what he just says here. Yes, Gene?
They spoke all of this before the Babylonian captivity.
Oh, yeah.
So long before, so it isn't like Israel, Israelite nation was warned.
Yeah. They definitely had their warnings. Here is just one of the places that they were warned about that. And I presume that a lot of times they would take this more literally and not even think of applying it to their spiritual adultery. They would be talking about actual physical adultery, which is talking about, but it also applies to the spiritual side of things, to committing adultery against God by going after other gods. But they didn't get the message. They did not, well, as recently as the next generation, they didn't listen. Rehoboam did not listen. And do you think maybe David might have said some stuff to Solomon? And did Solomon fall into the same trap? Exactly. And so, and Rehoboam, so, and then later on, as a whole, the children of Israel fell into that same trap, only with the sweet talking idols, the priests of those idols of Moloch and Ashtoreth and various ones like that. Sounded really, really good. They really liked the idea, tickled their ears and all that kind of stuff. Ended up going off into captivity, losing everything that they had. So these words are words of regret. You don't want to have to say those things. So if you don't want to have to say those things, what do you do? Well, here's what you do. Verse 15, drink water from your own cistern and running water from your own well. Now, is he talking literal here? No, what's that mean? All right. Stay in your own lane. He's gonna talk more about it, but all the way through here, he's talking pretty plainly about immorality, about adultery and fornication and that sort of thing. And these are simply metaphors for it rather than just saying it out literally. He's using metaphors, but they get the idea across, don't they? Drink out of your own well. Stay in your lane, that kind of thing. He's going to explain it even more. He says, should your fountains be dispersed abroad, streams of water in the streets? He's talking overall about streams of water, talking about blessings. And when you shed your blessings in the wrong place, he's saying, do you really want to do that? Do you want to spread your fountains abroad and your streams of water out in the streets? In other words, just throw it all away. Is that what you want to do? Well, he continues by saying, let them be only your own. You have certain things that God has given you, he's talking here in the sexual realm, but you have these gifts that God gives you, and it's made to be used for a good purpose. Go and fill up the earth, and he made it pleasurable for a reason, so that people would go out and fill up the earth. But he put restrictions on it. It's between husband and wife that this stuff is supposed to take place. And so he says, let them be your own and not for strangers with you. You don't share that part of you with strangers. That's something that's for you and your wife. He says, let your fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of your youth. Stay in your lane, stick with your wife and be happy. When can you command somebody to be happy, to rejoice? Well, if you do, what has to happen? They have to want to, they have to have the attitude of doing it. When a person decides that they don't like their mate anymore, what usually is the thing? They got their eye on something else. There are other reasons. The person is just acting like a jerk or whatever. But largely, it's something that you can do. A lot of it is your attitude, your mental attitude about if you wanna, you can turn your emotions off towards your wife and just totally ignore. But you also can turn it on if you have the right attitude and look at things the right way. And I'm not going to get into a big psychological discussion because we'd spend all day talking about that sort of thing. But that's what a lot of marital counseling is about, is getting people to fall back in love with each other because they've acted nasty towards each other. They've drifted apart and that sort of thing. Counseling is to try to get them back together and learn how to love each other again. It's possible to do. And so when he says, rejoice with the wife of your youth, that's something that you've got to do. You have to work at doing. I mean, when I say work at it, it's implying that everybody hates their mate, but I'm not saying that. But sometimes there are things you have to overlook in a relationship. You have to have patience with them, give them a chance to grow. Maybe they're, just the classic example, burning the toast, for example. Uh, well, have some patience, work with that, and they'll get better as they go. And yeah, Sue.
That mindset though, all they can think about is how bad the other person is. They don't think about how bad you are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's
Of thinking, this is the man I married, and now I don't even like him. How did I get to that point?
yeah,
How did it get so far out of that?
right. Yeah, and you have to have an open mind. Uh, It's always a two-way street, and you can't just look at the other person. You have to look at yourself. If counseling is ever going to work, I have a friend down in Phoenix who uh, he didn't want to do it, but he's as a desperation, he filed for separation from his wife because she won't, she just won't change. She's turned her children away from herself. She's turned all of her friends away. She's totally rejecting him, and she's self-destructing is what she's doing. And they've gone to counseling, and all she wants to do is talk about what he's doing wrong, and will not listen to a thing about herself. Maybe she has some issues from her childhood or whatever that she's not dealing with, that kind of thing. It is a two-way street, but it's possible. I mean, we're getting away from it, but it's possible to rejoice with your mate. It's possible, if you've drifted apart, it's going to take some work to get back, but it is possible, and that's what we need to work for. I want to be happy with what God has given me. I don't want to go chasing off after something else. Barb?
Solomon's writing all of this to his son, and they've had all these concubines.
And wives, 700 wives.
And here he's talking about,
Stay in your own life.
just like it's one woman thing, so I just find that very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, and in some ways it's hard to feature. If he's that wise, how did he let that happen? You know, but fact is, would he know what the consequences were if he hadn't let that happen? How did he get?
Women, and let's face it, women are jealous. If they don't get enough attention, they're not gonna do that.
Yeah, like you say, he might be reaping the consequences even as he's writing these things. And if it's really later in life, he's already reaped the consequences, but he's still feeling it. It's not over by any stretch. It doesn't go away. But either way, how does God give wisdom? Through experience. The experiences you have to helping you to have the right attitude towards it and everything. But without knowledge, if you don't know, if you don't know stuff, then you can't have wisdom about it. And one of the best teachers is experience to give you wisdom. Now, you don't have to experience stuff to know, that's a bad road to go. I don't go to casinos because, I know what can happen, and if I might have a tendency to just not use the self-control you need to have when you go there, have a little fun or whatever. So I stay away from that. Is it because I've lost everything because of gambling? No, but I've seen it happen and that sort of thing. But if it had happened to me, I would know even better about that. Solomon learned some of his wisdom by experience, a lot of his wisdom by experience. And just because you know better doesn't mean you're not going to do it either. Solomon knew better, but he did it anyway. We rationalize all kinds of stuff. How would Solomon have rationalized having all these wives and concubines?
What I need to do for my country, you know, to go back or get the good from other countries, they took women.
Right. Well, that's the thing. You know, when this king from Siam or wherever comes, he's bearing gifts, gold, you know, whatever, but also bringing some of the women from his harem, say, and here's my gift to you. One of the things I heard, I don't even know if it's true for sure, was about, you know, Christian missionaries going to Alaska to go work amongst the Eskimos. And apparently the custom was to offer your wife to a guest that came to visit. And what a dilemma that is. If you say, no, sorry, you know, I don't do that. They take great offense to it because that's something that's their custom. That's what they all think you should do. And okay, do I offend him and he won't listen to the gospel, or do I do what he's offering? You know, what you're between a rock and a hard place. And same thing would be true like with Solomon. These kings bring gifts. If I don't accept it, what's the king going to think? It's going to hurt my reputation with these other nations. That's one rationalization. You know, there's all kinds of rationalizing that you can do. But he paid the price. He learned how much problems you can have by having all those wives and concubines. And it's because, like Sue said, they're jealous of each other. When you have that many, you don't have time to spend with any of them, and they'll get bored. They'll work mischief and any kind of number of other things. And so he's just saying, just stick with your wife and rejoice with the wife of your youth. You don't, all that other stuff is just going to cause you problems. In verse 19, he says, as a loving deer and a graceful doe, let her breast satisfy you at all times and always be enraptured with her love. And so he's talking in language like he uses in the book of Song of Solomon, uh, just saying things metaphorically, but obviously he's just talking about let your wife satisfy your needs that you have and always be enraptured with her love. Have that attitude towards your wife that you know, well, he says enraptured. And what does that mean? It's like you're in on another level, so to speak. That takes some nurturing, I guess you would say. Uh, we might call it wining and dining. Usually we think of wining and dining, a husband wining and dining his wife, but really it goes both ways. It's a two-way street. You both have to have that attitude of your first date kind of thing. And that's how you keep it alive. That's how you stay enraptured. And so he says, that's what you want to aim for. And here's why, verse 20. For why should you, my son, be enraptured with an immoral woman and be embraced in the arms of a seductress? Why do you want to do that when you know that the end is destruction? Well, it's a rhetorical question. Bottom line is you don't want to do that. That's what he's saying. Why would you want to do that? Now,
It looks good from the looking part, but then when you get into the involved part, you're right back in the same situation you were before.
right.
You know, it's just an ever evolving tool.
Exactly. There's no profit under the sun, as he said in the Ecclesiastes. There's nothing, you don't take anything out that you didn't come in with. And bottom line is, it's just not going to solve any issue that you have. If you have problems, if you're falling out of being enamored with your wife, the answer isn't to go find somebody else. The answer is to work on it, and it takes two to do it. But you need to work on it and learn how to love each other again. You did once, so you can do it back again if you just uh, take action or do something about it. Gene?
One thing marriage counselors will tell the young couple that are gonna get married, they don't have that attitude, well, I don't like this about him, I will change that. Or, I don't like this about her characteristics, I will change that, because it doesn't work. You don't change your mate to suit your expectations, and maybe to some degree, but
Right.
the only person they always look.
Yeah, we all know people, we may have been one, thinking that, oh, well, I don't really like this but I can change it. And once we get married, that can't be your attitude. You know you're going to change. That's another thing is, you get married, this is the person I like, don't change. And when they start to change, you think, oh, wait a minute, this isn't the person that I married. Well, that's part of being a human being, is you change. Things get different, and appearance changes, habits change, that sort of thing. You have to learn to grow and work with each other. And if it's a habit that is something you consider to be unclean, so to speak, you talk about it and work through those kind of things. But bottom line is, the answer is not to go after this immoral woman that's sweet talking you, telling you how wonderful it's going to be and all this kind of stuff, because that's not going to get it. And in the next verse 21, again, here's why. Don't fall victim to this seductress. Why would you want to do that? Here's why you don't want to do it. Because the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. What that means is, God's watching, and he's 24/7. Dark, light, doesn't matter. You can't do anything in the darkness. What God can see it. God has night vision goggles on. So there's nothing that you can do, say, be, anytime, day or night, any winter, summer, spring, fall, whatever. God knows what is going on. What did Jesus say about the sparrows? God even knows when a sparrow falls from the sky. Do you think he knows when you're doing something you shouldn't be doing? And how many times do we convince ourselves, no, no. We just rationalize that away. We don't take it seriously. But God knows what's going on. And verse 22, he says, his own iniquities, this person that falls victim to an immoral woman, his own iniquities trap the wicked man. You trap yourself, essentially, because of falling into sin. You trap yourself into having to lie or cheat or treat people badly. You're just setting a trap for yourself. When you get involved with that kind of thing, you're caught in the cords of your own sin. They tie you up and bind you, so you can't function like you should function. Sin has kept you from being what you ought to be. And verse 23, he shall die for lack of instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. That's not a good ending. It's not a happy thing to say. Because is it because you weren't taught? The instruction is a two-way street.
I mean, the instruction, does that mean he never was given it?
Well, it could be either one, but in Rehoboam's case, is he getting any instruction? He is, but instruction isn't just being told what to do. What does he say to do it? Ponder it, think about it, let it soak in. That's part of instruction. If you can hear all the words you want, and it won't necessarily do you any good, you have to ponder it. You have to think about it. What's he saying? Why is he saying this? Is that a wise thing? Is he really saying? Yeah, he's really saying the truth. I don't like to hear it, but yeah, that's what he's saying. All right. And when you listen to it, you live. When you don't, you get caught in the cords of your own sin and bound up, and you end up not being able to. You're bound up. You can't even do the stuff that you want to do anymore, and you die, physically or spiritually or both. Not a good ending. So that's the end of this section on immorality. Next we get into chapter 6, but does anybody have any more comments you would like to make on chapter 5, Barb?
In our day, talking to a teenage son, and most of us know when they're kids, they're teenagers, they don't listen very well. They're gonna have some of that, they're gonna have to go out and experience, and then later they find out dad did really know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing, but it's human nature, I guess, is not really wanting to listen to wisdom and instruction. You just want to do what feels good, what everybody else is doing, or all the excuses that we use to fall into stuff. In the back of your mind, you know what the answers are, but you just choose to ignore them. And that's human nature. I think that's why Solomon is just pounding it over and over and over again. Get wisdom, get understanding, and stay out of the path of unrighteousness. Okay, well then in chapter 6, I think I'm going to stop and we'll just start with chapter 6 fresh next week. But in chapter 6, the subject changes now and changes to a different thing. And the subject is going to be co-signing a loan or co-signing for somebody. You taking responsibility for somebody else's debt or somebody else's problem. He's addressing that in chapter 6. So if there's nothing else, we'll end class and be back together again at 11 o'clock for worship.